In a world where entertainment is viewed as mindless diversion, only good for momentary distraction, one podcast has taken a stand, thoughtfully engaging the art of our day, dissecting the narrative, and pointing the people back to the greatest storyteller of all. You are about to enter a new world, and you will never view entertainment in the same way again. This is Popcorn Theology.
Welcome, movie lovers and theology nerds, to Popcorn Theology, where we examine films for where they align with the greatest story and our greatest storyteller, discussing what to receive, reject, and redeem for common ground, fruitful conversation, and mindful movie consumption. I'm Eric.
And I'm Maddy.
And we're doing a special series on The Rings of Power, Season 2.
So special.
Yes, so special. We wanted to cover this series as it released and provide some quick rounds of really receive, reject, and redeem. And just on the front end for this special series, there isn't going to be a spoiler-free section. So the whole thing, expect to have spoilers for Season 1 and going forward for Season 2. So Maddy, what is The Rings of Power allegedly about?
Allegedly. So this is an epic drama set thousands of years before the events of J.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. So The Lord of the Rings follows an ensemble of characters, both familiar and new, as they confront the long-feared reemergence of evil to Middle-earth. And I meant to say Rings of Power. Rings of Power follows an ensemble.
Yes. So
yeah, not
Maddy,
Lord of the Rings. This is Rings of Power.
Yes. So Maddy, what's your background with Tolkien and just the Lord of the Rings in general?
So I'm actually one of those people who kind of came late to Tolkien, unfortunately. I remember reading The Hobbit first, definitely, and I read that when I was younger. I don't really remember when exactly, but I remember reading The Hobbit, and I loved it. I just thought it was so fun and just an interesting world to be in. Unfortunately, I didn't read The Lord of the Rings probably until my 20s.
Okay. Yeah.
So, and I think it's because I had tried to read them when I was a bit younger, and it was too hard for me at the time, and I just kind of gave up on it, and I had grown up with the movie, so I don't remember a time not watching the movies, which some people say that's a detriment to me. I'm sorry, I can't help it. That's how I was raised. I saw the movies first. Sue me. Don't sue me. But yeah, seeing the movies first, I think definitely might have an impact on how you read it. But I loved the movies, and then I did eventually read the books and love them as well. And I could see where they differed a little bit, from the movies. I think overall it shared a lot of commonalities with the story, though.
Definitely had the spirit.
Yes.
So my background with it is don't remember exactly how old we were, but my dad read to the entire family, read The Hobbit and the entire Lord of the Rings.
I love that.
Pre-2001 when the first the Fellowship of the Ring movie came out. I also grew up watching the cartoon versions of the Lord of the Rings, which I loved. I know purists hate them and stuff like that. Maybe I would hate them now if I went back and watched them. Loved them. Love those. Love all things fantasy. I don't know how many times I've read the Lord of the Rings. For a while, I literally read it every single year.
Yeah.
It was just part of my ritual. Lord of the Rings. I would read the appendices all the time, all the time. I've read the Silmarillion multiple times. And so that what makes this show in particular frustrating for someone like me. Who I used to, the lore started to fade in my mind a little bit more, and I had to go and actually do some research. Just a couple little things here and there. But yeah, it was one of those where it's why are you changing the story when you literally have the books right in front of you that
Yeah.
don't need to be redone? So that's kind of my background with it. But let's go ahead and talk about season 1. I guess I'll start.
Yeah, you go.
And I'll say I did not care for season 1. The best thing actually about it was that it was the first episode I ever covered with Popcorn Theology.
Yeah, I remember that.
You can go back and oh man, I wish I had grabbed the Popcorn Theology number. I'll look that up when you're doing your thing. Love the time talking with David and Miles. I remember Miles was like, I didn't know the lore, so I kind of enjoyed the show and stuff. I was like, I disagree with you, but yeah, it was fun. It was a lot of fun. Like I said, didn't care for season 1. You want to know more of my thoughts on season 1? Definitely check out that episode. But Maddy, how about yourself?
So I didn't even watch watch the series until this week when we had discussed, a couple weeks ago that we were going to do this new series, and that was the only reason I was going to watch it, because we were doing this series on it. I guess I should say that I have read the Silmarillion too. Probably not the full thing. I kind of skimmed through it a little bit. I was just really interested in the Beren and Luthien story. I love that one. So I've read that one several times. But
Sauron's in that one.
Yeah.
He's in that story. Yeah.
Yep. But I've definitely skimmed through it, and I'm just the type of person who will go on Tolkien Wiki, or the one wiki to rule them all. I forget which ones they're called, and just look up facts about people because I find that interesting. And so, of course, I do that, while I'm reading, and then, also in preparation for the show. And so, watching season 1, I didn't like it either. So, to put it lightly, I hated it.
So you will have a better memory than I will for season 1. So
because I watched it back to back. I literally watched season 1 and then immediately started season 2. So
what would you say? Because I was trying to think through this, and I was like, I just don't have the memory I used to when it came to television shows. Which, if people know me, they know how shocking that is for me not to remember almost every detail on a show. So if I don't remember your show, that means there's something wrong.
It was pretty
with the show.
Forgettable.
So what would you say the overarching theme of season 1 was?
I don't know. I guess it seemed to be really based on Galadriel and her. I don't know. I don't think she ever really overcame her pride, to be honest. It kind of just leaked into season 2. But I felt like that was the main themes. It focused on Galadriel and her quest to destroy Sauron, which, again, that's not even a thing in the books. She never even fought in any of the wars or anything. So it was this revenge thing. But then she ended up, getting deceived by Sauron, which, again, opposite in the book. She's the only one who isn't deceived by him. So but again, I feel like it's kind of this corruption, which makes sense. I think they're going off of that, the One Ring and its power to corrupt, and that's Sauron. He has that power to deceive you and get into your mind and really take you down from the inside. So which it's an interesting concept. I just think it played out poorly, but I think that was kind of the main thing.
Okay. No, it's good. Thanks for the quick refresher on season 1. So for those interested, and I'll put this in the show notes with this too, is Popcorn Theology episode 273, which is the first 2 episodes of season 1. David and Miles cover that one. And then I reached out to them and told them how wrong they were about the lore. And they're like, well, why don't you come on? And then that was episode 276 was the first episode that I got to guest host. So it's crazy that was almost coming up on 100 episodes ago, which is just...
Are you serious? Oh my goodness. We're almost at 300.
Yeah. Well, we're over 300. We're over 350 now. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That is insane.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about our general thoughts. So the kind of the good, the bad, and the ugly of the popcorn side. So let's go ahead and give it, the Popcorn Theology ratings, the stale, fresh, or buttered and salted. So I'll go ahead and I'll start. I thought it was stale. It is a fairly boring show and was basically nothing to do with Tolkien's version. It's the I described it as the Skinwalker version of Tolkien.
I like that.
If there was a creature that would just watch humans for a while and is like, hey, I'm going to imitate humans, this is the Tolkien version of that. It knows a few beats, but it doesn't know what it means to be Lord of the Rings or Tolkien. Yeah, they definitely didn't understand the corrupting influence of the ring, and just Sauron's overall influence, how it worked. It wasn't the line that was from the first season and then repeated. I don't know if it was actually repeated in this season or just in the catch up of the power not of the flesh but over the flesh, which I will honestly say is actually I kind of like that phrase. Is actually is really cool.
It worked.
Yeah, it works. I don't think they fully understand like how that's going to work and how it worked in context of Tolkien's universe, where my feeling is with the orcs later on, like we see how Sauron's able to essentially control the Sea Dragon and the warg later on. I think they're going to incorporate that into later on and make it, once he has the ring, that it's going to make him be able to control the orcs as well.
Yeah.
That's my theory anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you judged this based purely off Tolkien's works, it would get a major F, like a major F. You cannot, with any integrity, say Tolkien would be happy with anything in this show. Now, Tolkien was a perfectionist. He probably wouldn't even liked, almost for sure, wouldn't even liked the Peter Jackson version. So, take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
But you can't with integrity say this is in the spirit of Tolkien. So, this is not Tolkien or the Lord of the Rings, but is it good? And I say no, it isn't. On its own, there's some really good set pieces. And I think you talked about it a little bit. People have been complaining about the Venom, Sauron, stuff like that. I actually didn't have any issue with that. I thought it was a very interesting way to represent how he can just grow and come back. Because misses the point of the lore, yada yada, whatever. But talking about this from just the show's standpoint, I thought it was a pretty cool set piece. I thought it was kind of interesting. I don't really care for the acting, the writing definitely not. I can't nail down the exact plot, and overall, this is the problem. I'm just not engaged. I'm just not engaged with it. But most of my complaints, as we'll go on, they're actually going to be different than like the Critical Drinker and companies, their complaints. And not that their complaints are necessarily anything wrong. It's just I have a different worldview when I come to some of the stuff. So like some of the stuff that they're going to complain about, I'm going to disagree with them on and go, no, I actually think that's a decent point that the show's trying to make. Just because we're coming from a different worldview, where I'm coming from a supernatural worldview. They're not. So it's kind of stuff. But I do give fantasy long leashes. So as long as you're telling a competent and compelling story, I'm usually happy. Like I love Merlin, goofy show, but it was compelling story, fun characters. Loved it. This show is not that. And I will say this, and this is one thing I will get out of the way. This show is not woke. I see some people call it woke. I see this. This show's not woke. I almost actually wish it were, because then there would actually be something to like truly be like, oh, this is wrong. This is wrong. No, this commits the worst sin for a storyteller. It's just boring.
Agree. That kind of leads me into mine, because I was like basically right there with you. I just found it incredibly boring half the time. I really struggled through the third episode today. So I watched the first episode last night, and then I watched the other two this morning, and like I started getting on my phone during the episode. I was like, I'm so bored right now. I'm like, I was writing notes, but like I was also checking other things. I'm like, I just can't. Again, I kind of agree with you too, with there being certain set pieces that I liked. I think one of my complaints from season 1 was that everything was so clean, so pretty. I think they fixed some of the cinematic issues for me, got a little edgier. There were a few moments of pure horror, And I know, again, that's hit or miss with Tolkien fans. A lot of Tolkien fans hate that, and that's why a lot of them didn't like Peter Jackson's trilogy. But I think you need to show horrible things in order to get the true nature of horror. So I like it when it's a little darker, I guess.
Yeah.
So
Spider biting the orc's head off and exploding.
That was a little too much for me, but yes. And again, I think what Rings of Power is doing is that they show stuff like that in Lord of the Rings, and they show, like, you know, people stabbing orcs. They just don't really linger on it. I felt like in this show, though, they kind of lingered a little bit, and it was getting a little gross. Again, like, I didn't mind it too much, but I was just, for those people that were saying, oh, it's, you know, it's a good family kids show, I'm like, yeah, maybe not this season. That was pretty disgusting, and I would probably have nightmares if I were a kid and I was watching that. But yeah, I was distracted by the Venom thing, honestly, because again, that's just me and my brain. Probably, I'm just like, it's Venom. It looks just like Venom.
Well, I did not ever see the Venom movie, so then
that may be that was probably why then. But I don't know. But like you said, there were just so many things that they could have done to make it more interesting and more dramatic. And I'm just gonna give an example here, because again, I watched it back to back, and the last season ended, like the very last episode, with Sauron, you know, accusing Galadriel that it was her fault that the the Dark Lord was rising again. He is kind of a dork. And that she's going to have to live with that, you know, and she's got this secret, and she doesn't tell Elrond and why am I forgetting his name? Celebrimbor. Thank you. Yeah. Celebrimbor, that Halbrand is Sauron. She just says, we're not going to talk to him anymore. You know, ignore the fact that never happened. Cut to season 2. The very first episode, she just comes clean about it. Like, literally, like the same day. And that's like the same day, I think. Like, it just goes from that day to the next day in season. It seems like it's right there.
It's hard to know the timeline. Yeah.
Yeah, that was very weird in this season too. But it seemed like it was like right there. And so first thing, she comes clean about it. And the thing is, from a writing standpoint, you could have milked that for a couple episodes to create drama. Mm-hmm. And like, oh, how long can she keep this secret? Is one of them going to find out? How are they going to find out about it? You don't get any of that, though, because she just, oh yeah, he's Sauron. Like, they just ask her a few questions. She's like, it's Sauron. And you're like, again, it's like, no, there's nothing to like look forward to. I'm not drawn really into the next episode. There's nothing to hook me for that. And again, they brought Poppy right back too, which I don't want to see any of the Harfoots ever again. Sorry. Yeah. But I like the memes that I've been seeing. It's like, not Frodo, not Sam. It's because I could never remember their names anyway. It's like, oh, it's not Frodo and not Sam.
Yep.
So yeah. And then I might honestly push back about a little bit against your point about it not being woke. So far, it's kind of not, but I could potentially see it becoming that, which we had kind of discussed before we started recording, was the fact that I feel like they're kind of pushing the orcs as this minority group a little bit. Like, we're supposed to feel sorry for them, and Sauron with his whole backstory that they show for like 20 minutes. That like, oh, he literally got backstabbed, and poor guy, you know, poor Dark Lord of Mordor. Yeah. I just don't feel sorry for him at all.
It's like that one skit where it was like calling themselves, the people are Nazis. They're dressed up as Nazis. Like,
oh, I think I've seen this.
Are we the baddies?
Are we the baddies? Yeah.
Like, I think when you're calling yourself the Dark Lord, you're the baddie. Yeah.
Yes, I've seen that. That's perfect.
Yeah. But so on the orc point, and it actually has nothing to do with your point, but I will actually say I like the design of the orcs. Huge,
from an aesthetic standpoint. Yeah, they're scary.
Huge improvement from The Hobbit, where they just CG'd everything. Terrible mistake. But I actually I asked my wife this. I was like, what do you think of the orcs? And she was like, yeah, they're pretty good. Yeah. My wife's big complaint, so I'll let her be on the podcast for a second with it, is she says this doesn't feel like a fantasy world. And she's like, it's not. She says it feels more like Star Wars, and I kind of like. I get this feeling. I know what she's talking about. It seems like it's this kind of like this foreign, far off place and stuff like that. That doesn't have any grounding in like a reality here that we can experience. Which fantasy is meant to be our world, but fantasized and heightened and stuff like that. So it's just kind of this interesting thing where but what she was saying, I don't fully understand exactly what she meant by it, but I was like, okay, cool.
I get that. I get that what she's saying, because it's like Star Wars is like so far removed, and I think some people think that Star Wars is like a future basically for humanity, but like again, it's so far removed that's kind of hard to think about. Dune, same thing. It seems like it might be a possible like future humanity, thousands of years in the future, but it is very far removed. And fantasy is more like our roots. Yeah. Like, where did we come from? Which that brings me back to Tolkien, that his purpose for writing Lord of the Rings, Silmarillion, was to create a folklore for England, basically, because he, in one of his letters to his friend, he literally wrote that he was sad that England didn't have like a rich mythology. Yeah. So it should feel like it is grounded some sort of reality. So I think I get where she's coming from with that.
Good. All right. So we all know that a film's quality doesn't always reflect its depth of theological talking points. So if we're going to drink from this film's depth of deep themes, like what's in the cup, and so is it diluted, carbonated, or cup runneth over? And for me, it is carbonated. There are several ideas to explore in this. Most of them are just completely half-baked, and I have no idea if they're going to pan out or go anywhere. And you kind of have to dig for them. Some of them, like I said, the phrase earlier of power not of the flesh, but over the flesh. That's a really powerful idea that you can start to talk about. And it's essentially, you could look at it as like the sin nature or something like that. It's like you can go many different ways. The show doesn't seem to be going those ways, so you have to do a lot of digging. Like I said, I'm still not sure the overall arc of the story is leading, so there's a couple points here that I'm like, that could be a good point, but I want to see if it develops later on in the series. And it's one of those we see, like, it is kind of one of the interesting things with the films is we know where all of these characters are going to end up. Yes. Elrond, Galadriel, Celebrimbor, if you know the lore, it's like Celebrimbor, the ship guy, Círdan.
Yeah, I think Círdan. I don't know. Yeah, it's a hard pronunciation.
Yeah, I was like, so you kind of know where all of these characters going to end up. Even the maybe not Gandalf character, we all know where they end up. But I don't have any faith in these writers to actually like get us there to that majestic Galadriel you see, to the competent and lordly Elrond. Yeah, it's like, so it's like I want to see where this goes, and apparently it's already been greenlit for 5 seasons, so we'll see.
Wow, the next that's surprising.
When you're one of the richest men in the world, you can do whatever you want.
I guess
you don't have to make and he's not even involved. He's just throwing money at it.
Yeah,
Maddy, what did you think?
I'm in the same boat there. I'm gonna say carbonated again, just because I don't like a show doesn't mean it doesn't have things worth discussing. But kind of along your what you were saying, I think the ideas are generally like ham-fistedly thrown out there. Like, it's literally dialogue. Like, they'll always say exactly what it is. So I have all of my stuff for Receive, Reject, Redeem is quotes, like literal quotes, because they just say it right out there, which that's called it's too much exposition. Yeah. But again, like, at least you hear what they're saying, I guess, and you can say like, oh, that's a good idea or that's not a good idea. So whether or not it's handled correctly, it's in there. So like what you were saying.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and we'll start jumping into some quick receive, reject, redeem, and we'll go ahead and start with the reject. And one of the things and so for those that are just kind of catching up with us, what we do in this is we take the themes of what the show is showing or what the movie is showing and say, hey, this is something that they're trying to say is a good thing. Do we reject it? Do we receive it? Or is there a way to like redeem it? And so one of the things that Galadriel was saying about, I guess, her encounter with Sauron, don't remember the exact context. Again, those people that know me, this is a very big problem. If I'm saying I don't remember what the show I just watched is telling me, it means those that know me know this is a big problem. She says, I did what I felt was right. And this is just a thing that you just reject outright. It's not about morality, is not about a feeling.
No.
It's not about that. It's about, you have counselors. She had counselors. She had her High King. She had her friend Elrond. She had all of these people, and she would constantly refuse to listen to them. And there's no actual punishments that ever start to come down upon her for constantly disobeying, for constantly doing things not right.
Yeah.
But she felt it was right, so everyone goes, okay, it was actually during J. Gresham Machen's day, for those that know that he wrote a book called Christianity and Liberalism back in the 30s. And there was the controversy of liberal Christianity coming and denying the virgin birth, denying certain Christology statements, miracles in general. It was like a whole bunch of like issues. And he was criticizing these people theologically. And someone said, well, you can't fault their sincerity, though. And he's like, I'm not faulting their sincerity. I believe they're sincerely wrong. And that's something we don't get in this show, is going, Galadriel, I know you did what you felt was right, but you were wrong, and you shouldn't have done that. And because of that, XYZ is going to happen, and now you're punished, or yada yada. Yeah. So what's one of your first points you got?
Yeah, kind of leaning into that, Galadriel's stubbornness and pride that just continues on when she says, I alone can slay him. I mean, she still hasn't learned her lesson from season 1, where she literally got deceived. Again, kind of from your point, it just seems like it's a total Disney Channel movie of just follow your heart, like I'll get him eventually, even though like he's the biggest deceiver there is. I feel like some people feel that way, maybe about the devil. It's like, oh, I could have taken on the devil, or I would have never eaten the fruit, on the tree. And that's just such a dangerous thing to think, is that you think that you would never have done that, because you would have. Every single one of us, because we did, basically. And it's just, I don't know, I guess I'm frustrated because, again, this she's made so many mistakes, and again, I get that characters need to learn, but she's still not learning from them, and like she still thinks that she's the one who has to fix everything. And I was just kind of hoping by season 2 at least that we'd get something more akin to the Galadriel we know and love. Wishful thinking on my part. I mean, she's thousands of years old by this point already. Like, I expect more from her, I guess. But I just think it's really dangerous to think that like, oh, I can do this alone. Like I'm the one who has to fix all of my own mistakes. And the show might turn that. I think they are maybe trying to show that she can't, in their defense. I don't know if they'll actually follow through on this or not, but they might.
Yeah. One of the things that I would reject is, I'll just call this the what's in the name section, where the not Frodo and not Gandalf are talking, and she's trying to figure out his name, and so she's just throwing names out there, and he keeps going no, and he says something like, when you hear it you know it, type of thing, which sounds really poetic, but of course some people who know their name when they hear it.
I have the quote here if you want me to read it.
No, it's not working.
Okay. All right. He's like, no. I was like, oh, wait, I think I wrote that down because I was going to say the same thing. I'm like, oh, yeah, that really bothered me.
Yeah. And so names are given or they are earned. They're not discovered. Like, you don't name yourself. Like, the people is like, it's the thing where it's like, if you ever went to camp or whatever, the kid who came up with his own nickname, know what he was never called? His nickname.
His nickname, yeah.
Yeah. As like, what we called him? We called him other things. But it reminded me of in Genesis when Jacob, Rachel is dying, giving birth to Benjamin, and she names him something else. I forget what it is. But basically, it's like my bane or something like that. It's not quite exact translation, but something like that. It's like, it's a bad name. It's not a good name.
Mm-hmm.
And Jacob names him Benjamin instead, and which is and it was just really cool thing where someone's stepping in, going, no, I'm going to give you a good name. I'm going to give you this name. Your names don't get discovered. Now, maybe they're thinking of like, I know Native American type things, where it's like some of the coming of age things where they go and they learn their spirit name or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's what they're trying to get at, and it's like, okay, but this is Western mythology. This is not Native American mythology. So,
and again, it just kind
mix
of
things there.
Yeah, and again, it just kind of spits in the face of the lore, because Gandalf had many names, given to him by different people. So,
exactly.
It's like it's not just one name, but they're probably going to go with Gandalf. So not Gandalf. I think the number one thing that I feel like we have to reject from season 2 specifically is this line between I cannot say his name, Kirian the shipwright, Kira, and Elrond. And he said, "What is beauty when it is born in part of evil?" That was Elrond. And then Kieran says, "No less beautiful." That is just so wrong, like, from a Christian perspective. Again, you cannot call good evil and evil good. Either something, is evil or not. If it was made from evil, then it can't be beautiful. So, like, we're made in the image of God, and so we reflect God, and yet we're corrupted by sin, but we're still the image of God. We're not pure sin,
Mm-hmm.
And I think they were kind of trying to do a, like, eat the meat, spit out the bones thing, but it just doesn't really work for what they're working with. Yeah. Because, again, like, Galadriel and Gil-galad's points actually do ring true. It's like Sauron didn't touch these rings, and that was like the whole point in the books too, is that Sauron had helped make all the other rings, but he had no part in making the elf rings, which is why they could use them. So again, they weren't corrupted in that sense. So I really do have a problem with you saying that, oh, just because something was kind of born from evil, that doesn't make it less beautiful. Lines like that. What do you think about that?
Was that the only person who can say that? The only person who can say that is God. Yeah. And so in the Bible, when Joseph is in Egypt and his brothers come back, and he says, "What you meant for evil, God meant for good."
Yeah.
But only God can say that. Only, and this is true. It's like, leave the judging to the judge of all things. That is a good thing. But the judge of all things has actually told us how to judge things.
Yes. And that was the other line, is he said something about not judging and let the judge of all things judge it.
Let the work be the, it's like something like, let the work be the judge, and leave the, basically, like, and essentially it's like, the work should stand on its own, but the person that did the work, let them be judged by judge their heart, their purity, yada. And this does cut to, basically, it proves everyone right that does say, well, if they had just given the ring to Gandalf, if they had just done this, it proves that Boromir was right. You should have given the ring to Gondor so they could have crushed Sauron.
Yep.
And then use the ring to build the Empire back.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, that's not how it works. You don't play with evil. You don't purposely do an evil thing so that good may come.
Yeah, it's like
Paul
some people
says,
will try to
"Don't do
justify doing like sorcery,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm doing it for God, and it's like, no, God condemned sorcery. You can't use a Ouija board in honor of God. Like it don't work.
Yeah, I think it wasn't Capone. I forget who it was, but since there's like famous gangster became a Christian, and they were like, "Oh, what are you going to do?" It's like, "Well, no, I'm a Christian gangster now," and it's like. Not how it works. Yeah, is not how it works. It's like no, you can't do. I won't say that, but you can't do immoral things for God, and just because He has amazing grace. Yeah, Paul literally says, "Should we sin that grace may abound?"
By no means.
By no means. By no means. And it's like. Just because something good come from it, I'll take not being Catholic. I think it's St. Peter's, right? It was built from indulgences. Like that's where a lot of the funding came for construction was indulgences. Does it mean the building is not beautiful? No. But we can absolutely judge how it was constructed and for what purposes and all of those things. Like just because something looks beautiful, the ring in this universe, the ring is absolutely beautiful. It was my
Sauron is beautiful, at least in that one scene.
Yeah, Sauron is beautiful. I mean, he was able to do that. Just because something is beautiful, this is what I say: is it what everyone always talks about? Is it good, true, and beautiful? There's a lot of things in this world, a lot of things that are beautiful in this world, but aren't good and true. And it's like just because something's beautiful doesn't mean it's good and true. It needs to be all three before you start to go, well, we should go ahead and use it this way. Yeah. So let's go ahead and move over to some receive and redeem. So this is not just we're not trying to
we're not
make
just
this,
hating on it.
Yes. And the future episodes are going to be shorter than this. We need to get the intro stuff talking about our background out of the way first. So let's go ahead. I'll start with a redeem that I actually thought was actually really, really good. Matter of fact, it actually may be a receive. Is the line that I believe is Elrond said. He was talking about the labyrinth is Sauron's. And he was saying like you can't play with and Elrond was saying you can't use these rings, you can't do this. It's like you're playing his game. When you're doing this stuff, you're playing his game, and it's his labyrinth. He knows all the tricks. He knows how to do all this. And I just really got to the thing. I was like, yeah, do not play with sin. Just don't play with it. It's like the typical thing in youth groups always was well, how far can you go when it was like dating relationships? Like, can you French kiss? Can you do this? It was like, no. You're playing with sin. You're already in it. Like just the fact you're asking these questions means you're playing in Sauron's labyrinth with that. So I would say that'd be a receive. Honestly, I'd probably go with a receive. That's a pretty good one.
Yeah. I thought there was a really good receive in from Isildur, and I don't remember what's her name, the girl that he found. So again, I can't remember anybody's names in here. But he was talking about losing his mom, and he said, I need to do something singular to earn what she did for me. Basically, she sacrificed her life to save his. And I immediately thought, like, oh man, that's works theology, son. That's bad news. I was about to, keep writing like, oh, this is a terrible reject. But then she actually chimes in with, you have to accept her sacrifice as a gift. And I'm like, well, that's reformed. That's reformed right there. So like that I mean, honestly, that whole line was awesome. And, if they could actually play that out, but again, I don't think it's going to play out because we all know what happened to Isildur. But it's a nice little, thing right there where you're like, this is Reformed theology kind of in a nutshell. Like, you don't earn your salvation. You don't earn what somebody did as a sacrifice for you.
So yeah, that was one of my points as well. Is like you accept sacrifice as a gift. It's not something you can earn.
Yes.
And it reminds me of, and I have not seen the movie in a really, really long time, but I've seen different opinions on essentially the final scene of Saving Private Ryan.
Oh yeah.
Where Tom Hanks dies and he says to Private Ryan, earn this.
Mm-hmm.
And the old man years later is at the grave site going, did I earn it? And it's
Did I do enough? Yeah.
Did I do enough? And it's this thing is like, when you sacrifice for someone, like Christ didn't sacrifice himself and then raise up and go, all right, now what are you going to do for me?
Yeah.
It was like, this is what I've done for you. What are you going to do for me?
Mm-hmm.
All of us would call we would call that emotional manipulation.
Yeah.
If someone's saying, I'm doing all these things for you, and you're just, what are you going to do for me now?
Yeah.
We all recognize that as abuse. And so, I'm glad that the show recognized that.
Yeah. Yeah. That was one good thing they did.
It's like, Isildur is not about earning your mother's sacrifice. I mean, one, you never could.
No, you have to give your life in order to match that. Like you'd have to give up your life.
Yeah. And so my last receive was that demons also often masquerade themselves as angels of light.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, it was, we did talk about this. Feel like I've seen pictures of quote unquote angels or angels or like Jesus or whatever that literally looked like the scene of Sauron showing himself. And I was like, okay, I see the imagery there, the hands down, the sides, like see the imagery of what you're doing there. But I do like, particularly when we want to be led astray. That's really when he gets to us. And the thing is, like, if you look at the temptation of Eve and Adam and Eve, if you look at the temptation, he wasn't barging in as a dragon and forcing them to eat the fruit. He was just asking them questions. Asking them questions and going, hey, I'm just here. I'm the first, matter of fact, a line from the movie The Devil's Advocate is, hey, I'm a humanist. I'm the first humanist. I just want you guys to be free. And that is, there's a couple scenes, it's really heavy-handed, but there are a couple scenes in this where it was showing Sauron's cleverness of like how he was using, a turn of phrase or this or that. Like I say, really heavy-handed, but it gets to the heart of he's giving people what they want. And by giving people what they want in a wrong way, he actually gets everything that he wants, which is control over all of Middle Earth at the end of the day.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. He's, it's definitely the biblical imagery, the devil masquerading as the angel of light. And that's how the devil gets to us sometimes, is by thinking, by offering us, well, you can just, you can be like God, you can do whatever you want. But it's not true freedom. True freedom is only in Christ. But I'll say my last receive redeem, which again, I thought this was a really, really good thing. Again, maybe a little ham-fisted, but is the elves longing to go to Valinor, to leave the West, and yet realizing that, they need to stay and fight for Middle Earth because of this darkness that is happening. And it just reminded me of what Paul says, for to me to live is Christ and to die is gain. If I am to live in the flesh, that means fruitful labor for me, yet which I shall choose I cannot tell. I am hard pressed between the two. My desire is to depart and be with Christ, for that is far better. But to remain in the flesh is more necessary on your account. And I just thought that was a really good analogy for that. Is that, again, like as Christians, we long for a better world, that heavenly place. And yet Christ isn't asking us to go off ourselves, basically. Like you can't just kill yourself and just get the easy route to get there. You have to pick up your cross, and there are fights that you have to fight here on this Middle Earth.
Yeah.
And you have to do that. You have to go on the road that he is leading you on first, and at the end of the road you get to that beautiful place. But it's something we definitely long for. So we have a desire, but we have a duty, and I think that's pretty well portrayed as what they're struggling with.
I think that's a great spot to end on. All right, so until next time, keep engaging movies and media from a godly perspective, and remember, you are not a mindless consumer.
Thanks for watching this episode of Popcorn Theology. For more content, subscribe on YouTube. Follow and interact on social media to help broaden the conversation. Check out our archive of past episodes at popcorntheology.com or wherever you listen to podcasts, and consider becoming a patron saint by supporting us on Patreon, which lets you interact, influence, and enjoy exclusive bonus content.